I'm going to really dig into this NBA thing and hopefully put it to rest. I have a proposal for the NBA. A proposal that you liberals should endorse. You millionaire and billionaire liberals should endorse. I assume the players will endorse. The owners will endorse. Oprah Winfrey will endorse. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar will endorse. The Marxist economist from France, whose book is #1 on Amazon, he'll endorse. I've got a proposal to make, and you're going to want to hear it, I think. Yes, one. By the way, as a little aside, your president and your vice president so far have spent about $42 million on vacations. $42 million on vacations. Well, they talk about equality, the little people. Well, EPA is running around trying to destroy industries and jobs. These people are living high off the hog on your money. They're a disgrace. That word disgrace cannot be used enough. Yesterday I made the point, with respect to this NBA issue, that we now have a new standard. And you've probably heard this all day long. I didn't listen to a lot of radio today, but I'm getting emails. This one said this. I understand. That's the burden I have to bear. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this NBA stuff. In the end, it's a distraction. What did he say? I said, in the end, it's a distraction. But when I spoke about a Monday, I knew what I would say on Tuesday. And when I spoke about it on Tuesday, I knew what I would say about it today, step by step. And yesterday I explained that now that the NBA has done what it's done to this owner, and it cannot be said enough, and it is not said enough, that what he said is truly deplorable. I said this, cut one, go. If this is the standard now for the NBA, that when the NBA learns about comments, racist or bigoted comments that are made even in private telephone conversations, will the NBA do the same thing to anybody associated with the NBA? Other owners, team managers, and the players themselves. That is, if people record phone conversations in which anybody associated with the NBA, management, owners, players, corporate office, the NBA offices themselves, and they are caught making a statement that is racist, that is bigoted in some way, is this now the standard for everybody? Player, coach, owner, executive. Well, shouldn't it be? I mean, if the goal here is to wring out every vestige of racism and bigotry, I assume it will be applied equally as justice compels across the board. So apparently an owner can lose complete control of that which he owns, the team. I assume a coach can lose complete control of that which he coaches, the team. I assume a player can lose complete control of that which he controls, which is his contract. Right? I'm back live. I'm guessing, based on the emails I've received, you've heard some of this today. And then I made this challenge. Cut two, go. I would like to ask the head of the Players Association, let me see what his name is here, Mason, Roger Mason, the vice president. So Mr. NBPA vice president, I'll ask you questions that apparently the sports media will not ask you. Do you believe the commissioner should have a blanket rule that any player who speaks in any bigoted or racist terms, whether in his private life or otherwise, should be banned from the NBA for life? That's my question to the vice president of the NBPA, Roger Mason. That's also my question to, I guess, Oprah Winfrey. I guess Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And my question is, why isn't Al Sharpton banned from every NBA game, given his record, his outrageous record? And what about Jesse Jackson and his statements? Jaime Town, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We cannot have this, right? Now, I'm back live. A few hours later, our buddy Ben Shapiro at Breitbart, he did a little digging, and he said, because privacy now extends only to comments with which we agree as a society, what about this? What about this in the NBA and the NBA standard? In 1997, Golden State Warriors All-Star Latrell Sprewell, playing for coach P.J. Carlsimo, decided to go berserk after the coach asked him to put a little mustard on his passes. Spruill then wrapped his hands around the coach's neck and dragged him across the floor for 7 seconds. He then emerged later and punched him. 2 years earlier, he had accosted a teammate with a 2x4. He was suspended for a grand total of 68 games. He wasn't banned for life, and his actions were more than words. We call that assault. How about being a publicly vicious racist while black? Spike Lee has stated that white gentrification of Harlem has been horrible. He has posted the address of George Zimmerman's parents online to spur violence. He explained after visiting South Africa in the early 1990s, quote, I seriously wanted to pick up a gun and shoot whites. The only way to resolve matters is by bloodshed, unquote. And he, like Donald Sterling, is no fan of interracial dating. Quote, I give interracial couples a look, daggers. They get uncomfortable when they see me on the street, unquote. Now, he's currently a host on NBA radio on Sirius XM. He stars in NBA commercials and had a front row seat to the Sterling announcement. Why isn't he banned for life from the NBA? Then there's Jay-Z. And he isn't just feted by the President of the United States. He's a former part owner of the Brooklyn Nets and as an agent works closely with the league. He was spotted recently, as you know, at an NBA game wearing a necklace medallion for the 5% Nation, which sees black men as gods, as white people as devils. What about that, Commissioner Silver? And what about anti-gay statements? These aren't even over taped telephone calls, ladies and gentlemen. These things didn't even have it in the privacy of somebody's home. They're right out there in front of everybody. And I have a solution to all this, but not yet. In 2011, Kobe Bryant called referee Benny Adams a F-A-G-G-O-T. He received a $100,000 fine and no suspension. In 2012, current Clippers forward Matt Barnes called an officer an effing F-A-G-G-O-T. Then made an attempt to handcuff him. No fine. Suspended for 1 game. And that suspension was unrelated to the slur. In 2012, Amir Sotomayor of the New York Knicks sent an anti-gay slur to a fan via Twitter. He was fined $50,000. No suspension. In 2013, Roy Hibbert of the Indiana Pacers used an anti-gay slur. He was fined $75,000. No suspension. And the Houston Rockets team is currently being sued by a gay waiter for their alleged use of anti-gay slurs. The NBA has taken no action. They haven't even investigated. Mr. Commissioner Silver. How about this? In 2004, Steven Jackson and Ron Artest of the Indiana Pacers leapt into the stands in Detroit to attack fans. Jermaine O'Neal fought fans on the court. Full-scale melee ensued with players fighting fans and fans fighting players. The result, Ron Artest was suspended the remainder of the season. Jackson was suspended for 30 games. O'Neal was suspended for 15 games. No lifetime ban. 1995, when the Houston Rockets guard Vernon Maxwell didn't like the comments of a fan, he charged into the stands and punched him. The result, a huge 10-game suspension. How about Gilbert Arenas? Suspended only 50 games, and his teammate Javarius Crittenden, he was suspended for only 38 games after they drew firearms at each other while arguing over gambling debts in the locker room. In 2009, J.R. Smith, then of the Denver Nuggets, pled guilty to reckless driving. His driving resulted in one of his passengers dying. He was suspended for 9 games. Now, none of this makes Don Sterling's repulsive and disgusting statements, his racism, doesn't make it okay. None of it means he shouldn't be punished. It does demonstrate that for the NBA, they've got other issues that they do not address or address as effectively or as harshly as they've addressed this owner. Why is that? Why is that? Well, I'll let you draw your own conclusions. But this Spike Lee issue, to me, is a serious one. Spike Lee sat in the front row when this Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, this peculiar-looking, geeky man, got up there and said, I'm in charge, in effect. And as I said, he works for Sirius XM NBA Radio. This is Lee. It's an outlet run by the NBA. And this guy, Spike Lee's racial history is pockmarked with ugly racial statements. He also stars in NBA commercials. So why isn't he banned for life from the NBA? Ladies and gentlemen, I look at the NBA. I never really looked at it too closely after I stopped several decades ago. I now see that 3 players, Bryant, Garnett, O'Neal, during the course of their careers, will make $300 million. That's just salaries, not endorsements. $300 million. You liberals, pay attention. There are dozens of players in the NBA who make between $100 to $200 million. Right, Oprah? There's scores of players during the course of their career, I'm not even talking about endorsements, who will make $50 to $100 million during the course of their career. And even the bench sitters, for the most part, become multimillionaires. Multimillionaires. These folks, they fly on private jets. They rub shoulders with the high and the mighty in politics and in Hollywood. Not the top 1%. Ladies and gentlemen, they're the top 1,000th of 1%. Aren't they supposed to be despised? Did the president go on a multi-state tour telling us about inequality? Inequality. Didn't the president attack corporate executives for private jets? If we didn't become successful on our own as a result of our own intelligence and motivation and so forth, then I have to assume these basketball players, or any athletes for that matter, haven't become successful on their own. But I have a number of problems with that. Why should a player earn $300 million a year? Mark, just stick with me. Why should a player earn not a year, in a career? Why should a player earn $50 million over the course of a year? Why should a player earn $20 million a year? It's not fair. What are they going to do with all that money? What are they going to do with all that money? Right? Even more than that. So many levels it's unequal, ladies and gentlemen. Why should a guy who's 6'8" make more than a guy who's 4'8"? Why should a guy who runs fast make more than a guy who doesn't run fast? Why should there be merit in competition? What we need here, ladies and gentlemen, is redistribution of wealth. Why is it that we nationalize the healthcare industry? Why is it that we attack every industry, one after another, condemning private economic activity, condemning wealth creation, condemning success, condemning millionaires and billionaires, but somehow the NBA goes untouched? Why is that? On any given day or night when one team is playing another, there are more millionaires and billionaires in that room, the arena, than anywhere else. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Meanwhile, what about the fans? Aren't the fans being ripped off? Why should the fans be paying $6 or $7 for a hot dog that in wholesale is 25 cents? Why should they pay $5 for a pretzel when you get 6 of them at the store for $3.99? Why should they pay $7 for a bag of popcorn, which costs 50 cents? I'm not done. Because I have my solution to what should happen to the NBA. So the players, all of them are multimillionaires. Some of them are super rich. Of course, the owners are billionaires. The managers, the coaches, all multimillionaires. While they're ripping off the fans, the cost of the seats, the closer you get to the court to watch the multimillionaires play for the billionaires, for so many people in our society is prohibitive. Poor people and minorities in particular. Have you ever watched a basketball game, if not in person, on TV? Of course. Look at the first 20 or 30 rows. What do you see? Mostly wealthy people, or lower upper middle class or upper middle class people, right? Who's sitting in the bleachers? Mostly poor minorities. We're being told if you want a hot dog during the course of a game, you have to cough up $5 or $6. You want a cold beer, you have to cough up $5 or $6. You want a bag of popcorn for your kid, you have to cough up $5 or $6. To pay whom for what? To pay the millionaire players and the billionaire owners. Well, we can't have that in this country. Everybody should have access to a basketball arena. It's one of our national pastimes. It's in the public interest. It's for the public good. Why should it be limited to such a few? Well, I don't think it should be. So how do we make this affordable? Okay, here's what we do. It's the National Basketball Association. Okay, we nationalize it. Just like the healthcare industry. Why not? If we can nationalize our most essential requirement, healthcare, where the government can dictate the kind of healthcare we can have, what kind of prescriptions we can get, what kind of policy we can have, which doctor we can go to, what hospital we can go to, and everything in between. If the government can do that, well then why should the NBA be excluded for such important, equitable treatment? After all, it's just a basketball game. And if the government has the power to take over one industry or another, it certainly would have the power to take over the NBA. Private property rights be damned. Contracts be damned. And it should set prices on food the way it sets prices on health care. Price controls. Why should hot dogs be $5 when it costs the owners and so forth 25 cents a piece? So the federal government should set a price limit. $1 a hot dog. That's it. Equality, spread the wealth. That's fair. That's fair. Now what about the players, you say? If it's $1 a hot dog and $1 for a bag of popcorn and $1 for a soft pretzel and $1 for a Coke and maybe $2 for a beer, how are we going to pay these multimillionaire basketball players? Well, we'll pay them. We just won't pay them millions. What do they need with all this money? What are they doing with all this money? Isn't 3 or 4 cars enough? 2 or 3 homes enough? I mean, if we control oil companies and we can control steel companies, we can control healthcare, we can control this. Well, why leave basketball untouched? No player, in my view, should earn more than the President of the United States. The President gets $400,000 a year, thereabouts. My memory, maybe I'm off. Why does any individual need more than $400,000 to live? And besides, basketball isn't a full year profession. 2-3 months of the year they can do something else. They have endorsements. They can go on ESPN. There's other ways they can make money. But why should the fans be subsidizing millionaires and billionaires? Particularly poor fans and often minorities who have to sit in the bleachers with binoculars to watch these millionaires play basketball. And this can apply to any sport. I would also set a federal limit of $20 a seat. $20 a seat, no matter where the seat is. And the way you would get a seat is we'd spend $400, $500, $600 million on a website. And we can do it through a lottery process, but there'd be a limit. 1 game every 5 years. I mean, these arenas can only fit 15, 20, 22,000 people. There's a lot of people in this country who want to watch basketball. Everybody should have a chance to watch a basketball game at a reasonable price, and a reasonable price for refreshments. It's only fair. And there's no reason these basketball players should be earning tens of millions of dollars during the course of their careers. No reason whatsoever. They don't need it. Also, we would need federal monitors in the locker rooms, at the practices, and at the games to make sure there's no hate speech. I mean, you think there's hate speech on radio. You ought to hear these locker rooms. Oh, my God! You ought to hear them on the courts, on the ice, on the football field, on the baseball diamond. You should hear these athletes, what they say. Hate speech, left and right. Well, we can't have that. I assume Senator Markey would agree with me. Communist Massachusetts. So we need federal monitors in the locker rooms, at the practices, and the games, just to make sure these players understand. I heard the NBA commissioner say it himself. Racism, and that's a broad term. Could be misogyny, could be attacks on gays and so on. This is not going to be tolerated in the NBA. Not in the federal government NBA. No more hate speech. And by the way, hate speech, we mean offensive tattoos, provocative clothing. You know, like in the public schools, you go in with an NRA shirt. Oh, you're suspended. You know, same thing. Same thing. Liberal rules need to apply to everybody. Redistribution of wealth needs to apply to everybody. No industry, no profession should be accepted. If it's good enough for life and death health care, well, it's certainly good enough for basketball and other sports, isn't it? In fact, there's no reason that these sports players, these athletes, should have a separate healthcare system. They should all be forced into the Obamacare system, because nobody should get better health care than anybody else. Period. Now, maybe they can have the bronze, maybe the silver, maybe the gold. Maybe we'll be that beneficent and give them a choice. But that's that. That's that. They shouldn't be better than anybody else. Why? Because they're great physical specimens? Because they entertain? Well, so what? A human being is a human being. And one other thing. What are we going to do? What are we going to do about the racial makeup of various sports? We would not tolerate this in any other walk of life. No major business, not in our public places, police stations, firefighters, public schools, IBM, AT&T, United Airlines, you name it. We cannot have sports, which is a business after all. A business, a big business, multi-billion-dollar business. Exempt, can we? From all these other laws coughed out by the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, by the Labor Department, by this, that, and the other. And besides, it's unfair. It's terribly unfair. So I would call on the EEOC, the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division of the Labor Department, the Civil Rights Division of the Education Department, all the other civil rights divisions throughout the federal government, and I'd take a very serious look at this. Because it's unfair. It's unfair. Just because you're born, your ancestors are in a different part of the world, just because you're different in some way, doesn't mean you shouldn't be a professional athlete too, whatever the sport is. So we'll want to look at that too. Ownership too. Shouldn't be all white guys. Fine, we can take care of that too. My point is, why is the NBA exempt from all of this? From all the rules and regulations and conditions and laws that apply to so much of the rest of society. I just think if this country's gone to hell as a leftist utopia, well then, we can't leave any profession or business alone. They all have to change. And there's no reason that basketball or the other sports should have a privileged position in our society, in my humble opinion. So I'd be very interested in knowing what the head of the Professional Basketball Players Union, or the other unions, think for that matter. Oh, I would. I'd like to know what the players think about all of this. I would. All the libs out there. All the phony liberal front groups like Media Matters, the criminal front group funded by George Soros. How that escapes the IRS's review, I will have no idea. But if we believe in radical egalitarianism, if we believe in social justice, if we believe in all these things, redistribution of wealth, price fixing, salary limits, wealth limits, that success is not an individual endeavor. I mean, who built the basketball court after all? Who mows the football field after all, and the baseball diamond? Who runs the Zambonis on the ice in the hockey leagues? These players, they're not successful because they are who they are. They're successful because of roads, because of basketball courts and stadiums and arenas and ice and grass and all the rest. Who the hell do they think built that? You and I, we built that. They're successful because of us. Oh, and I forgot one thing. For people who want to buy beer at the basketball games, no photo IDs. We all know that's discriminatory. We heard a left-wing federal judge say it. Obama has said it. Holder has said it. The ACLU has said it. So no photo IDs for the purchase of beer at these sporting events either. Now, let me just put it to you this way. I think I'm going to sum this up for the vast majority of the American people, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity. We are sick and tired of these prima donnas, whether they're the owners in this NBA, whether it's the players, whether it's the all-important, self-important ESPN and Fox commentators in sports, Fox 1, who think this is the biggest thing facing the country. It's not. Where millionaires are fighting billionaires and billionaires are fighting billionaires. In all of our lives, it is utterly meaningless. It's utterly meaningless. We have an economy that grew at 0.1%. Do you know what that means? It means we're heading for another recession if things don't turn around. And I've argued that we've never gotten out of the last one because they play with the figures. But do you know what this means? It means people can't find jobs while these a-hole millionaires are fighting with each other. They're so offended. They're all offended with each other. They've never heard such outrageous things in the locker room. There are a-holes in this world. There are racists in this world. Some of them are billionaires. Some of them are homeless people. Some of them are middle class. Some of them are in cities. Some of them are in suburbs. They're all over the damn place. And you live your life and you muscle through and you move on. The whole world has to stop. The whole world has to stop and listen to Oprah Winfrey. The whole world has to stop and listen to this NBA commissioner. And Magic Johnson, and the next one, and the next. Who cares? Day after day, the same damn thing. We can't secure our borders. The Federal Reserve is going nuts with printing money that's going to affect this society for decades to come. We have a debt that threatens to destroy our economy and destroy our country. We have a president and administration that covered up an attack, murder of 4 American citizens. We have an IRS that has been politicized every bit as much as the Soviet Union system was politicized, going after individuals because of their political beliefs. We have a country where the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Ninth Amendment, and the 10th Amendment are all under attack by the government. 25% of college grads can't find jobs. Over 10 million people on Social Security disability. Over 40 million people on food stamps. There's another report here today. China this year, communist China. Its economy is going to be bigger than ours. And as the Financial Times reported, not since 1872 when the United States passed Britain has the United States ever been second to anybody. Our country's being hollowed out. Our military's being hollowed out. NASA's being hollowed out. And I'm supposed to sit here, and we are supposed to sit here and get sucked into this because some jackass owner offended Magic Johnson. The millionaire players get together and threaten the billionaire owners. And here's the truth. It's the fans who are being abused. It's the fans who are being abused with these ridiculous salaries, these ridiculous ticket prices, and these ridiculous food prices. Obviously, I was tongue-in-cheek. I don't want the government anywhere near this. But the point is, most of those owners are liberals. Most of those players are liberals. Most of those coaches are liberals. Most of the sportscasters covering it are liberals. Why don't they want the government running everything?